It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Okay, what I was saying, which was kind of funny because I was talking about how like you can't understand people wearing masks, and then my mic didn't work. So that's ironic. Do you guys notice that? Like how it's kind of hard to understand people? And I feel like when I have a mask on and I'm trying to understand somebody, I almost have to stand closer to them. Like, sort of defeating the purpose. All that has nothing to do with what I was thinking of. It was in my head as I was walking up here. So we are in the middle of a series called Streaks, and while last week Luke made a really poor joke about what happens when you eat Taco Bell, I personally am a fan of Taco Bell. Anybody else out there love them some Taco Bell? Yes. Taco Bell, you lovers unite. Very good. I choose to think of a streak as something that you do repeatedly that you keep track of. So Luke defined it last week as a consistent engagement. Like you can't have a streak like just one time, right? It's only a streak if it happens repeatedly. And the idea behind this is that this kind of consistent engagement, when it comes to our faith, can actually help us grow and thrive in our faith. So we're talking about some practices, some things we can do repeatedly that are going to help our faith grow. Who spent 4 days in this building with us at camp? Anybody? Yeah. So it was different, right? But we had an awesome time being able to talk about what it means to really live with extreme faith, what it means to really anchor our hope in the right place and to believe God for things that are bigger than what we could ever understand on our own. And this idea of streaks, the series coming out of camp, was really purposeful on our part because we want to help you understand that there are practices, things we can do to continue our streak when it comes to growing in our faith, living an extreme, radical, authentic faith. So this week, I want to spend some time talking about a practice that I believe very strongly and that I think has great impact to change the way that we view our lives, and that is the importance of connection in a group. Now, when it comes to continuing our streak here in group, we want to talk tonight about just what does a group look like? What does it mean? Why is it important? How can it help us? And I want to kind of talk with you guys about some things that really have an impact when it comes to groups. So often, when we talk about our spiritual lives, when we talk about our faith, we talk very specifically about ourselves. I talk about my faith, my struggles, my successes, my victories, where I'm reading out in the Bible. But sometimes I think we miss out on the fact that while our faith is deeply personal, your faith was never meant to be lived out alone. Your faith was never meant to be lived out alone. In fact, it was actually meant to be lived out in the context of loving relationships with other believers. Think about it like this. In Genesis, which is the very, very beginning of the Bible, if you're not familiar with the Bible, there's lots and lots of books. It's not like a book that you pick up and you start at the beginning and you read all the way to the end because it get really confusing. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible. It talks about how God created the world. It talks about how God has always been, that before he created anything, he was. And in this book, he talks about the time when he created man for the very first time. And if you know anything about it, right there in Genesis, it says that God created Eve, the woman, to come alongside and to be a partner for him. And now, a lot of times when we talk about Genesis and we talk about Adam and we talk about Eve, we talk about how God intended for man-woman relationships to work. We think about creation and Adam and Eve as in that context. But if you kind of take a step back even from that, the reason that God created Eve was because he saw that it was not good for Adam to be alone. He knew that Adam was going to need relationships with physical people on the earth. And the same is true for us. We need relationships with people here. And I believe that a group, a small group, is a way for us to really find that connection. It's not just Adam, though. It's not just Adam and Eve. All throughout Scripture, you can find groups of people who met together for the purpose of understanding more about who God was. And if you think about it, Jesus actually modeled this for us in his relationship with the 12 disciples. So Jesus came to earth. He lived as a man, fully God, fully man at the same time. And he did life with 12 other guys. So what happened is he was serving people, he was healing people, he was making miracles happen all around. And there were these 12 guys who he had become so close with. And he was teaching them, he was showing them what it looked like to live in close relationship and in close community. He cried with them, he laughed with them. I can only imagine like some of the conversations that Jesus and his friends had. But you could kind of say Jesus was part of a small group with these 12 disciples. Then after Jesus went to heaven, after he died and rose again and came back and appeared to his disciples, he gave them the task of going out from there and getting to know all kinds of different people all around the world. And what started happening is that small groups started to pop up all around that area. Now you have to understand, when the disciples went out and they told people about the miracle that had happened in Jesus coming back to life, it's not like all of a sudden they went from like these 12 disciples to thousands and thousands and thousands of people meeting in a big room like this. What they did was they started meeting in people's homes. They'd go to people's homes and they'd say, let me tell you about Jesus. Let me tell you about the difference that he's made. Let me tell you about how he heals and how he restores and how he brings back things that were dead. And slowly, the good news about who Jesus was started spreading throughout the world. And there were small groups of people that would meet in different areas, and they would study who Jesus was. They'd study letters that were written from the disciples, and they would learn to grow. And that's how the church came to be. They were small groups meeting all over the place. Now, when I talk about small groups, I'm referring to this idea of people who are like a group of people who are striving towards the same goal of becoming more like Jesus by spending time together and talking and learning and growing and really just doing life together. Here at 912, we have a really phenomenal group of adults who give so much time and effort to be able to come alongside of you. So I just want to take a minute. We don't do this very often, but if you are a small group leader in this room, will you please stand up? Stand up, yep. They're kind of all along the outside. Yes. So these group leaders are absolutely amazing. You can sit down. Thanks, Em. She's like, yes, I am a small group leader. I will stay standing. Anyway, we have a phenomenal group of adults who have committed not only to coming for a couple hours on a Sunday night, but they are committed to being there for you. I know a lot of these adults, the reason that they love being a small group leader is because they know what it was like to be your age, to remember the hurts and the struggles and the frustrations, and also wanting sometimes to have somebody to talk to that's different than your parents. We believe strongly that your parents are the primary influence in your life, but we also know that at this point in your life, you need people who are going to come alongside of you and walk with you as you go. And so we have these wonderful small group leaders who are dedicated to you. And we love our small groups because we believe that group connection leads to spiritual growth. Now, that's not necessarily like an equal sign, because there's some things that we have to do. You can come to church every single day of your life and not know Jesus. You can go to a small group and not grow in your faith. There's some parts of it that rely on us to take some intentional steps. But we believe that being connected to a group sets you up the best possible way for spiritual growth to happen. So I want to take a minute and talk about a few things that groups do for us, some things that we learn from groups, some things that we can really gain from groups. So the first thing here is this: groups help me grow. Groups help me grow. The way things are set up right now for us with our groups, every group has time to talk. We have time to share together, talk about life. Sometimes it's being able to talk about every single detail that's happened in your life, and sometimes it's sharing a high and a low, because you may have 25 people in your group, and there's not enough time for everybody to be able to share every single thing of their life. The second thing we always do in our groups is some sort of teaching. We believe that, what we learn here at 912 is really awesome, but I don't know, if I'm honest, sometimes I've sat in a church service, and as soon as I walk out those doors, I forgot what we talked about. Like, anybody else guilty of that, right? So We put a lot of effort and energy into making our services something that you will want to be a part of. And our small groups are really awesome because they take an opportunity to say, okay, let's dig into what we talked about at 912. Let's really take that message and let's apply it to our lives, because what happens is if you just hear the message but you don't do anything with it, what good was it? So our small groups are a great place to grow because they're a place for us to talk about what happened at 912. In Hebrews, which is in the Bible, it talks about this, chapter 10. It says, let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. We believe that our small groups are a place for encouragement, where you guys can speak into each other's lives and where our adults can say, hey, I see this really amazing thing in you. I believe good things are coming for you. I believe that God has plans for you. And our adults can speak into that. So we believe, number one, groups are a great place to help us grow. Number two, we believe that groups give us a place to belong. A place to belong. Guys, so many people today are just desperate to belong. To find a place to feel loved and accepted and like you can be completely yourself. I don't know, what you walked in today feeling like, but there are times when I do feel like when I'm with certain people, I can't be all myself. We want you in your group to be able to find a place that you can belong. And our groups, they give us that opportunity. We believe that groups are important to be able to do life together. One of the things that makes me the most proud as a pastor is the times when I find out that our leaders are having text conversations or FaceTime calls or coffee dates or ice cream appointments or lunches with students outside of this time. Because a lot of times we just come in here and we just listen. But when you leave and you have a connection with a group or with another person or a group leader, it offers you the chance to be able to talk about what's going on in your life. Number three, groups give me a place to be honest. Groups give me a place to be honest. When I think about kind of the goals of small group, goals of what we want to see happen in each of our groups, I want you guys to be able to feel safe, to feel like you can really share what's going on, that you can really be honest about the things that you're thinking and feeling. And we try really hard to create spaces where people can open up about their lives. In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17, it says this, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. When I talk about being honest and I refer to this verse, what I'm talking about is this idea that when we walk together towards Jesus, sometimes there's going to be things inside of us that we need to address. Sometimes there's going to be things about the way that we work, the way that we talk, the way that we treat people that we need to address. And sometimes iron sharpening iron is kind of like friction. It kind of hurts a little bit because we have to be able to be honest with each other. We have to be able to say truthful things in love. Now, that's not an excuse to bash someone or to be rude to them. But when we are honest with each other and we say things in love, it really helps us grow together. Number 4, groups give me a place to wrestle with my doubts. Groups give me a place to wrestle with my doubts. Sort of building off of that third point about honesty, because we can be honest, we can talk about the things that we're struggling with. We can talk about the things that we're wrestling through. And we can admit when we're thinking about things and have someone else with a godly input to be able to speak into our lives to say, hey, I understand that this is a struggle for you right now. And instead of trying to automatically correct you or tell you that you're wrong, I'm just going to listen. Because so often what we really need is someone just to hear us out and to be able to process through that and not to say automatically, no, you're wrong. That's not right. That's not what God thinks. Because all that does is shut people down. All that does is put them on their heels and make them think, gosh, I guess I can't be honest. I guess number 3's out. We want to create a space where you can wrestle with your doubts. Number 5, groups support me. Groups support me. I mean, I wish I could stand up here and tell you the long list of stories that are coming to my mind of the ways that our groups have come around students in times of trouble. I think about students who I know whose parents have divorced and the way that their small group leaders have jumped in to love them and to care for them and to support them. I think about those who have lost grandparents who are so close, and small group leaders showing up to funerals and small groups showing up together to support each other. And I think about some of our special needs students who have come through over the years who have played Special Olympics basketball, and the small group showed up at that game to be able to say, you might not be the best basketball player, but I care about you, and I care that you care about this. I think about those who maybe their strength may be in theater, and then they have small group members who are athletes who don't understand what theater is, but they show up to their performance to let them know, I care about what you're doing, even if I don't understand it. Our groups are here to be able to support us. Galatians 6:2 says this, carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. There is nothing like being able to share what you're thinking or feeling with someone else and feel like, man, I don't have to carry this by myself. And I love that element about our groups. I love that we have the opportunity to come alongside of each other and to say, hey, man, I know what's happening right now is really tough for you, but please know you don't have to do this by yourself. I want to support you. I want to care for you. And our groups offer us that opportunity. Now, I realize I've kind of thrown a lot of stuff out at you guys, and if you're not connected to a group, you may be thinking like, cool, another one of those talks. But here's the thing. I don't want you just to take my word for it. I want you to hear from some of your peers why you should be part of a group. Watch this video.
Hi guys, I'm Ella, and one way that being in a small group has really affected my life is I feel like I was really able to grow during the hard times of my life and being able to turn to those leaders and those girls.
I'm active in my small group because they help me grow in my faith on a more personal level than when we meet in larger groups.
Being in a small group has affected my life by letting me always have a brother to turn to at any time because my leaders and friends are always there for me no matter what.
So being in a group has made a difference in my life in so many amazing ways. It is so awesome to be able to do life with people your age, and a lot of times they're going through the same exact struggles you are. And it's so awesome to be able to work through them together and be able to praise God in the end for all that He's doing in your group.
Being in a group has affected my life tremendously due to the fact that I have a great group of guys who are always there for me, encourage me when I'm not doing the best, and just show the love of Jesus to me and always just remind me, hey, Jesus loves you and so do they.
Being in a small group really just takes the next step, like after church or whenever you guys meet, and it really helps you understand and fully grasp some things that we talk about at 912 or during church, and it's really just changed my life, to be honest with you guys. And I just love the girls in the group so much and the leaders, and I'm super thankful for them. So I really encourage you guys to go out and try and find a small group. It's something so wonderful.
My group is always there for me by comforting me in my walk with God and always moving me closer to Him. Not only this, but my small group is always supporting one another, whether that's going to each other's sporting events or helping out on replacing a roof.
Jesus says in Matthew 18:20, "For when 2 or 3 people are gathered in my name, there I am among them." Jesus calls us to meet in smaller groups so that we can have a more intimate relationship with Him, and that's why I meet with my girls as often as I can.
My leaders are there, always praying for me, always encouraging me. My leaders have been there for me at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning, answering any questions, talking through things with me, and they are just truly, like, I could not ask for better people to be in my life. Like, they just mean so much to me. And I just love the girls in my group so much, and I just have such a close bond with them, and I truly could not ask for a better group. I encourage you to be in a group so much. It truly makes a difference in your life, and God just has great plans for you and your group.
Yeah, so I think think they probably did a way better job helping you understand why groups matter than I ever could, because it means so much to hear from your peers. So those of you guys who helped out with that video, I appreciate you. So at the very beginning of this, we talked about the things that small groups can do for us, but there's a few little things here that matter, because those things are totally possible, but we have a role to play in those things. So the last things I want to talk about here, just some closing thoughts for us. The first one is this: groups only work if you engage. Groups only work if you engage. Like, just showing up is not enough. Just showing up is not enough to be able to know for sure that this is going to help continue your streak of growth. A lot of times what needs to happen is that you need to open yourself up to the process, open yourself up to the leadership of the group, open yourself up to the girls in your group. I realize that for some of you guys, the group that you're in, you may have known those girls for a really long time, or those guys for a really, really long time. And you may think, I don't really know anything about them. Like, we've been in the same circles, but like, we don't actually know each other. And I encourage you in this time, like, maybe there's things that you can get to know about somebody that you never imagined that you'd know about them. This is also, in this section here, is also where like accountability can come in, because your group leaders have a ton of life experience to help you along the way, to come alongside of you and say, look, I realize that your struggle is this or this or this, and I've also struggled with that. So let's find some ways to come alongside of you. Accountability looks like being honest with people around you and allowing them input into your life to be able to walk alongside of you. In Proverbs 27, we already kind of talked about this chapter a little bit, but in verse 6 it says this: wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Now that's kind of like a weird saying, but what it means is that when you have a friend and they have things to say to you that may be hard to hear, that may wound you, that may hurt your heart, that may sting a little bit, but that actually it's something that you can trust, because when you trust that person, their intention is to help you get better. Now, one of the things that I love about groups is being able to have people in our lives who can help us, who can come alongside of us. And in James 5:16, it says this: therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Some of the most powerful group times that I have been a part of are also sometimes really difficult. Because what they look like is sometimes people talking about the raw, real, maybe not the pretty stuff, the ugly stuff of our lives. But there's this thing, when we say confess, what that means is to admit something, is to put something out there, to make known something, to be able to say, look, I confess that right now, like, I'm kind of struggling. I confess that right now, the things I've been looking at on my phone are not the best. I confess that I have been desperate for other people's attention, and so I've carried myself and I've acted in such a way that is not honoring to God. Confessing means being honest about our lives. And it talks about here that when we confess things, then it heals us, because it's not in the dark anymore. Growing up at my parents' house, we had this drawer, and I don't know if this is really weird to you. I've talked about it to a couple people, but like my parents would put their bread in this drawer. Like, instead of keeping it out on the counter, like in the pantry, I don't know why, they just always put their bread in this drawer. And I don't know if you guys know how like decay works or like mold, but like that stuff grows in the dark. And so sometimes I'd pull out the bread to like make myself peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and like, oh, it's like green and nasty. And like 2 days ago it was just fine, right? But like now all of a sudden it's covered in green. Gotta find something else to have for lunch, like get kind of disappointed. Here's the principle behind this. For some of us, we keep things hidden so far inside of ourselves that they grow and they fester, and mold becomes a part of who we are because we've not exposed it to the light. If that bread had sat on the counter for a little longer, it would not have gotten the mold on it. When light shines on things, darkness has to leave. And the things that we hide in the dark, they eat away at us, they fester, and they multiply inside of us. But when we open ourselves up and we say, look, I'm real nervous right now. I do not feel comfortable doing this, but I can't keep going the way that I'm going. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna admit, I'm gonna confess the things that I've been thinking and the things that I've been feeling. Then we're allowing the light to shine on it, and darkness has to leave, because light and dark cannot be in the same place, right? if there's the sunshine and the darkness are not in the same place. And when we confess those things, we actually can find healing inside of ourselves from Jesus because we're showing people who we are. We're shining the light on the things inside of us. The other thing about groups that's important is that consistency matters. Consistency matters. You know, it's tough to feel really connected to a group if you're not a regular part of the time that the group is together. And look, I get it. This is probably the busiest generation of people that has ever existed. You're going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. But here's the thing. My parents always told me this. What's important to you, you do. And if continuing the growth streak in your life of living in extreme faith is important to you, then there may be some things that you need to change about the way that you live. If you are too busy to be able to be a part of things, maybe there's some things to look at. Also, there's lots of group leaders who are willing to meet with you outside of group time, but it's still not going to be exactly the same because you're not meeting with other guys and ladies your age to grow together. Consistency matters. Find ways to connect, even if it's during your sports season. I know some of our groups have pushed back to starting later in the evening so that other people can show up. I know some of our groups meet earlier in the morning so that people can show up. I know some people who, they're all on Sundays because typically there's not that much happening on Sundays. Speak up if the time doesn't work for you. That doesn't mean it's automatically going to change, but your consistency in the group matters. And the last thing here is that there is strength in diversity. There is strength in differences. You're not going to know every person in your group right away. And there are some people who just by nature are more closed off. But just because someone is not like you, just because someone is not interested in the same things that you're interested in, just because someone does things differently than you do, doesn't mean that you should automatically write them off as being a friend or someone who can come alongside of you. You're going to have differences, and there's actually a lot of strength that can be brought to the situation by having those differences. You know, my very best friends are complete opposites from me. They're late to most things. They're like warm and cuddly and soft and like super sweet, and I am like on time, straight to the point, like direct. Like we're totally different, but the thing is, that makes it better. That makes our relationship better. And I remember being your age, and I would have a certain set of friends during my volleyball season, and then I didn't play a winter sport, so I was like kind of like, who's going to be my friend? And then when softball would come around and we'd start warm-ups for that, then I was friends with my softball friends. But you guys need to have people in your life who are different than you, who are in different activities than you, because there's actually a lot to be learned from people who are different than you. Tonight we're going to wrap up a little bit differently. We're going to do something a little bit different than we've done in a while, and we're going to actually dismiss and have you guys head out into the cafe in just a minute, and you're going to join a group for the evening. A lot of you guys are already in a group, so if you're in a group, if you're part of a group, that's the group that you're going to go to. I'm going to dismiss you here in just a second by grade and by gender so I can know, everybody's out there. If you're not sure what group to go to, you're welcome to come see me. Pastor Luke's in the back there. You can ask him, or you can just go with your grade and your gender. So what we're going to do, just a little heads up, what we're going to do, you're going to get a little half sheet of paper. And on that half sheet of paper, it says, what is something interesting about me? That's all you have to do. You're going to write down something interesting about you. You're not going to put your name on it. And then we're going to have a little game that we're going to play. This, a lot of times when we break out into small groups, like it's kind of heavy and deep. This is like fun night. Like we're having fun tonight. You're going to get some stuff out there, some ice cream and stuff out in the cafe. But we want to kind of just have a time to get to know each other, really grow in our relationship. So if group leaders want to go ahead and head on out there, that'd be awesome. Let your people know where you're going when you go out. And then I will have freshman girls stand. Head on out to the cafe. Take your pen with you when you go because you're going to need it. Take your pen with you. Sophomore girls.